Cruising through hour number 2 here on the Jake Feinberg Show on Power Talk 1210 KEVT live here in Tucson, Arizona. It is a wild weather day out here in the old Pueblo. Temperatures in the low 40s and vicious weather outside. But thank you for making us part of your day today. Part of my show is based on magic, the assumption that if you seek in earnest and with an open heart, that what you seek will present itself. Oftentimes, you force things before they're fully cultivated. In doing so, you conceal the magic and lessen the frequency on which you operate. As a radio host, I have encountered magic on my journey. It's one of the reasons my show has continued to sustain. Here I am 5 years in on a local AM radio station in Tucson, leaving no stone unturned, finding cats all over the world who have contributed to the great American lexicon of music. Rhythmists, inventors, leaders, lovers, collaborators, and individualists. My guest today has a magical touch on the drum kit. The sound that he gets emanates from gut bucket, boogie-woogie, blues-based rhythms of Americana. His time is near perfect, and his groove and swing is in the same master drumming discussion as Paul Humphrey, Mickey Roker, Styx Hooper, Mike Clark, Elvin Jones, and Papa Joe Jones. When you listen to my guest, he creates rhythms that seem effortless, even if the beat is on the 1-3 instead of the 2-4. Boogie on, reggae woman, because my guest has swung countless studio sessions spanning all musical genres. And he can play in a live setting as well with iconic figures like Elvis Presley, Jerry Garcia, and most recently with Neil Diamond. Time for another magical connection. Ron Tutt, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Thanks, Jay.
Nice to hear you, brother.
Same here.
We led in with a track, a Lalo Schifrin track, Rock Requiem. You played on that album?
Yeah.
I wanted you to talk a little bit, Ron, about the beginnings. Were you a jazz freak?
At one time in my life, I was. Yeah, I didn't start out into jazz.
Can you talk? Yeah, go ahead. What did you start out with?
Well, I guess basically was the first paying gig was Western swing, which is a form of jazz, which is a form of two-beat music too, country music, And I went from that to Dixieland into jazz and the various types of playing jazz.
Because when I'm looking at your early credits, I see you on a Lalo Schifrin album. Again, it's Rock Requiem, so they're talking about a fusing of two different genres, but there's a Paul Horn album, and I'm just trying to, through the eyes of the horn, and, I wanted you to talk about, could you talk about, I guess, when we talk about Western swing, Dixieland, the movement into bebop, or, in fact, maybe just hard bop, can you talk about, who were some of the people that you looked up to or that you idolized when you were getting off on jazz?
Well, I'd say as far as drummers are concerned, I was more of I appreciated both schools of the bebop, the harder bop, the harder East Coast. But I appreciated both sides. But I was fascinated by the taste and touch of guys like Shelley Mann and Mel Lewis from the West Coast, and Stan Levy and guys like that played with Charlie Parker and guys like that. But the East Coast guys were also Max Roach and guys like that were very interesting to me as well.
I can't believe you just dropped Stan Levy's name because I'm friends with his wife, Angela, on Facebook. And
wow.
And Stan was great. Would you say, every time I hear Elvis, he's like, the hardest working drummer from Texas, Ron Tutt. But when did you get to Southern California?
In 1969.
Okay, so
I started with Elvis in Vegas in 69. So on my way to do that, basically, I segued right on into L.A. from there.
All right. Well, I really want to get this down. So, were you playing? You were born in Dallas, in Texas,
right?
Right. So were you? You were playing like? They were calling it like they'd say like, let's get funky. There was no term in the lexicon for the word funk, But were you playing like R&B, blues kind of bands? And who were you playing?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
there was a guy out of Dallas that I played with right before I moved on out, named Galen Jeter. He had a group called the Brass Blues Band, and it was basically four horns, rhythm section, and organ. All the great R&B songs of the day, and it was a lot of fun to play.
Can you talk about the blues circuit that you would go on? Because one thing that's amazing to me is that to come to find out that guys like B.B. King and Albert King and Freddie King and so many of these guys could play jazz. I mean, you get for my generation, you think that they're just playing just a simple blues, but those guys could play jazz tunes. I mean, were you playing? What kind of music were you playing with Jeter?
It was R&B. It's all the old wonderful Memphis R&B stuff.
But and then that circuit that you would take, what would that circuit?
Well, it wasn't necessarily in a circuit. We were just playing around Dallas, and in clubs, and there wasn't. I didn't actually go on the road with it or anything like that. I was in the studios during that time.
What studios were those?
The ones in Dallas. There was a company called Pepper Studios and TM Studio, PAM Studio, which were basically jingle warehouses doing all kinds of music. It was a great background it was like taking constant college courses on all the different schools of music and different types. So it really kept you aware of what was going on musically.
Could you give an example of one time that you just got humbled a little bit by the style and really had to figure out and how you overcame it and actually got competent at it?
Well, I'd say later on, much later on, I was fascinated by the great reggae bands and artists out of Jamaica, obviously. And I did a session down in Houston, and they had a warehouse full of all the reggae records that had been recorded up to that point in time. They were distributing them, and they went out of business, and they said, just take, I was asking about, what is this? And they said, well, just take what you want because it's all going to go to, going to be given away. So I grabbed a huge armful and shipped it all home and just studied, and I wanted to take the challenge because reggae music was the first thing that came along to me that was really, really different. It put the drummer in a totally different role, and I wanted to know how to do it.
Can you talk to, as a non-musician like myself in the audience, about how the drummer played differently? Was it more than just on the 1-3 instead of the 2-4?
Well, that's very, very elementary example of it, but the drummer really wasn't necessarily the basic timekeeper anymore. He was like the color player. He played over the top of what the guitar and maybe an organ, they were laying down a rhythm track, and the drummer played over the top of that with different little fills and accents, and the way the drums were tuned made a difference too. So those are the authentic styles of reggae. And of course, the English grabbed it and took it pop, and they did some interesting things.
This is so fascinating. I mean, were these ska records that you grabbed, or was it more? Do you remember who the leaders were that you grabbed? The bushel of records.
Oh, I remember groups like the Heptones.
Oh yeah,
and I loved what they did, and of course, gosh, that's all I can think of right now. But other than the normal Wailers and all those groups,
Mm-hmm. So let's just talk here. How did you wind up? What was the first time you met Elvis?
Oh, first time I met him. Well, I had met him in the 50s. It was the first band I really played with, ever got paid money for. I had just started playing drums, and we were the Saturday night house band for the Louisiana it was like the Louisiana Hayride, the Grand Ole Opry. It was called Northside Jamboree from Fort Worth, Texas, at the Stockyards. And we were told that Saturday night that we wouldn't have to play, but this kid named Elvis was coming in, and he came in with Scotty Moore and Bill Black. No drums, just the three of them. And that's the first time I met him. Then we didn't really talk much. It was basically, how you doing, kind of a thing. And then later on, in '69, that's when I came out to the West Coast to audition for him. I played then. So that was the first real serious meeting musically, so to speak.
Can you paint the picture of that audition?
Well, yeah, they had been auditioning drummers for a few weeks, and they were doing so for the opening of the International Hotel. Elvis was doing his comeback to live performing. He hadn't done that in, say, 10 years, and they were putting this band together, and I got a call from my friend Larry Mahobrak saying, I put your name in the hat. Can you come out tomorrow night? It was basically on a Friday night. He called, said we're holding our last audition, and we've got this one guy, but I told them they should listen to you, and so can you get yourself out here for tomorrow? So sure enough, I did, and they had already heard this other drummer came in. I had come early and set my drums up, and he walked in, and he started playing. He was a drummer that had done a lot of Motown dates in L.A., and you could see all the nods of approval going on between the musicians, thinking, "Wow, we got the drummer. We're cool." And I'm sinking lower and lower in my chair, thinking, I came all the way out here. The guy's on my drum set, and I'm not even get a chance to play. But about the end of it, everybody kind of went over and started putting their music, their instruments in their music cases and so forth. And my friend gets up and goes over to Colonel Parker's table and points. I see him pointing over to me. I'm in the back of the hall there, and reminding him that he paid for a ticket for me to come all the way over.
Absolutely.
And so the colonel went up to Elvis, I guess, and said, we got this one other guy that came out from Texas. So kind of begrudgingly, you could see everybody kind of plug back in and say, okay, here we go again. So, and we immediately hit it off. We just musically, and just the general attention, the eyes, we could communicate without saying stuff, and it worked out pretty good.
Well, apparently it did. I mean, that can you talk to the audience? I mean, you might not think of it as that impressive, but that's a pretty daunting experience, like where everybody's wrapping up. The other drummer played, you're telling me he played before you?
Right.
Okay, so there it is. The morale in your mind is like, oh my God, these guys, it's already lock, stock. Why even bother get up there? Can you talk about overcoming that kind of adversity mentally? Because seriously, you had to let go of all that tension or whatever you were feeling inside and just flow. And you're talking like it was. You make it sound like it's easy that you guys just immediately connected. But how have you done it in your career where you block out that kind of I don't know what you want to call it, a peer pressure, parent, whatever, and just lock in? I mean, I think that's absolutely vital, because that's a great. I mean, you were down to the last percent, and you pulled the rabbit out of the hat. I mean, talk about the mental fortitude.
Well, I think it's being prepared with what you do. I'd played enough kinds of music and played with enough great musicians that in Dallas and in Memphis that I had a good amount of confidence that I could do whatever was asked for me to do, because there's that versatility comes in again. And no matter what feel of the song he would bring in, whether it be a country feel or old blues feel or old rock and roll feel or rockabilly, whatever, I felt like I could handle it. And that was the beauty and the versatility of his band, could do that. And that was the same thing with Garcia. We played so many different genres, so many different styles that it helped to be very familiar with them and feel comfortable in them. And you have to just have confidence in yourself that you can do it, without being a big swollen ego thing. You just have to know that this is what I do, and I hope we hit it off, and you just try to pay attention. I tell young drummers, you got to develop big, huge elephant ears,
Right.
You got to listen. And in the case with the bass player, the drummer has to listen to him. It's a marriage. And that's why I was fortunate enough to play with Jerry Sheff. He was the bass player, and we played together on a lot of projects, and then later guys like John Kahn, and then with Neil with Rainey Press, the guys I played with the longest in my life, those three guys.
What an honor to live on Power Talk here with Ron Tutt, who's currently living in Nashville. The drummer was like James Gadsden or Benny Benjamin. I mean, what happened to that drummer? It must have been shot.
His name was Gene Pello.
I don't know. That name does not even ring a bell. But anyway, how classic is that? He's feeling pretty good about himself, and then all of a sudden, they're like,
he was feeling a little cocky, I think.
and then like, we're gonna go with Tutt on this one. Actually, that's awesome. It's amazing that when you do an improvisational show like mine, and these songs, like you would play with Garcia, you'd play them all the time, but somehow they'd be different all the time. And here I'm on my show, and like before I connected with you, I emailed Jerry Sheff, but apparently he can't hear very well anymore, and he can't.
That's correct.
So that dude was he could play. He was a great bass player. You're telling me Sheff was Elvis's bass player?
Yeah, in '69.
Oh my gosh!
He and I were the rhythm section.
How did you guys lock? Go ahead.
I was going to say I replaced Jim Gordon and Jim Keltner, and he replaced I can't think of his name from Oklahoma, but anyway, another great bass player. But we just hit it off really, really well. We had the drive and energy that and sound that Elvis was looking for.
Keltner and Jim Gordon were playing double drums with Elvis, or was just they were switching?
No, I'm sorry. With Delaney and Bonnie, I got ahead of myself there. Right after we did our first gig with Elvis, we joined Delaney and Bonnie together. The band basically went out with Joe Cocker, with Mad Dogs and Englishmen, and so Delaney and Bonnie were looking for a drummer and bass player, and so two of us replaced three of them.
Unbelievable! This is phenomenal. So, so then at that point, Elvis, could you talk about how rigorous his touring schedule was? You said he had been off the road for a while, but he was back on, and how much of the time were you on the road with him?
Well, in the beginning, it was only a one-shot deal in Vegas. We didn't realize that he had signed a contract, or the Colonel was dealing for a situation where he'd come in twice a year, but we never knew that. We only had one contract for one appearance, which was basically around a month or so, and that was in August, and then he was going to return again in February, which we didn't know about, and so we were free to do other things, and I didn't do that next gig when he returned again because I was out with Delaney and Bonnie, and Jerry and I were, and all that. So
wow. So you, and then did you take? When was the next time you connected with Elvis? Because a lot of the clips that I was watching were from the late '70s, kind of after Garcia bit. So was there a hiatus there?
Yeah, there was. There was about a year, and then I joined it back again in the fall of 1970. So. But as far as touring is concerned, he wasn't touring per se from city to city. He was doing the Vegas thing. And that was the first time he had appeared live, in concert. But as the years went by, the next few years, he started branching out and doing serious touring.
Right.
I used to call it the tour of the month band. You know, we were out so many days every month.
When was the first? So I've done a couple interviews I sent you with Keltner, and he would sit in at this place called the Dragonwick Club and watch Bobby Hutcherson and Charles Lloyd play, and all he wanted to do was be Philly Joe Jones. And I'm curious, when in '69, can you talk about a jazz gig that you had? Did you ever play at Shelley's Manhole? Did you have a jazz gig at all?
Well, yeah, I did once I got in the studios there, and because I went directly from the Vegas thing into L.A. and did a year. I had a verbal contract with Mike Post, who was the director of the Andy Williams show.
Sure, oh, absolutely.
But of course, I started doing sessions with all the great players, studio guys, and one of the things we would do from time to time would be to get away to a club called the Baked Potato.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Go ahead. Yep.
And there was a place called Dante's Inferno,
sure.
And we would play there. And I played there with Rittenauer and Larry Carlton and the L.A. jazz guys. So that was kind of fun to get a chance to blow it all out.
No, we're not. This is where the pocket of Jake Feinberg lies, because next week, ironically, I have Tom Scott on. Who was,
Tom and I used to have the same business manager. So
so you'd go to the Baked Potato and just be, and playing with Larry, Max Bennett, and those cats, and just
yeah,
unbelievable. And just playing were you playing like standards and stuff, or you just can you talk a little bit about the kind of stuff you'd be playing?
The material,
yeah.
That's probably the one thing I don't remember was what we played. What was the set list? I don't remember. I don't know if we were just jamming blues. Because I honestly can't remember that part of it.
It's really interesting because guys like Tom Scott, if you listen to their stuff on Impulse from the late 60s, he's channeling John Coltrane. It's really hard bop stuff. And then by the early 70s, rock had come in, obviously, and Dante's was definitely more like, that was more like Emil Richards and Chuck Domenico and did you play with those cats?
Yeah, I didn't do too many live things with them, but I was definitely in the studios.
What about the odd metered stuff for Tutt? You could handle that? Because you make this stuff look effortless, Tutt. Emil was doing Harry Parch kind of stuff. Were you working with that stuff was crazy, 16.
Well, I stayed away from the real complex stuff. I didn't feel that was my forte.
Yeah.
I just stayed away to the straight ahead stuff. I was more of a bebopper when it came to jazz, but when it came to the rock, I was more of a southern rocker. So,
well, we got
middle of the road. I don't know. I hate to even pigeonhole yourself.
No, it's true. And we got a game on this program called Name That Tune. So, Ron, we're gonna listen to this tune right now, and then we're gonna come back and break it down.
Okay.
I've been hanging on threads. I've been playing it straight. And I just got to cut loose before it gets too late. I'm going. I'm gone. Grandma said, boy, go follow your heart. true love ever part.
It's Hanukkah, and my Hanukkah is complete now, being able to play that for Ron Tutt here on Power Talk 1210. What do you got for us, Ron? What tune is that?
Oh gosh, I cannot remember that one.
That's a Dylan tune. Going, going, gone.
Going.
Going,
Okay.
going, and from 1975, Legion of Mary from Scranton, Pennsylvania, 4/12/75. It's a tape I've listened to for probably over 15 years now, and I never ever thought I could get to it. I a couple of technique questions for you. That tune was being played at such a slow tempo. How were you able to keep a rhythm on that? I please talk to the audience about for drummers out there. Because that was about as slow a tune as you could do until you got to the build up.
Yeah, it's known in the jazz world as slow songs are harder to play than fast. You know,
Absolutely.
It's always guys are trying to show their chops up with how fast they could play. The real challenge is to play slow and to make it adhesive. So you have to subdivide, and you have to learn to play in between the notes. It's what you play in between, and lay down the pattern that's important, keeps it together. And I had to learn my role with Garcia and those guys. I mean, I could have told you that was the Legion of Mary because I could hear Martine and Merle and all of that playing, and John, and of course Jerry's sound. He's such a wonderful player when it comes to the real, I don't know, passionate ballads, I always call them. That's the style of guitar he always played. And anyway, that's the challenge, is to adhese, to make things flow at a very slow tempo, and you have to subdivide. This
is perfect. I mean, okay, so like I know, was it stuff that you, and when you first joined up with Merle and Legion and John Kahn, did you guys make an effort to talk about subdivision?
No,
never.
No, because we never talked about anything. We just played.
I love it. You never, but I mean, God, I have 4,000 questions. But I mean, some of the stuff you guys, I mean, I wish we could play Boogie on Reggae Woman, and you're on fire, and that's it. And then you're listening to like a Catfish John, and people are like, God, the double time, or Mission in the Rain, and the double time by Tutt is just making this song so beautiful. Because sometimes the tunes would be so slow, and I'm trying to think to myself, how did they, I'm just thinking that, like, I want to believe that you guys made it a conscious effort to say, play slow, play slow. But you're saying no discussions about it.
That's correct.
When
we just play. It's what we felt. It's the way and Jerry felt the songs that way, and we all contributed to that feel.
I'm going to take a guess, but the first time that you met John Kahn was Jerry's first studio recording?
That's correct.
Can you
John
talk?
called me up, and we met at the session, actually.
You talk about that? So that was John grew up in Los Angeles, but he why did he call you?
Well, I guess he enjoyed what I did, liked it. I guess he was looking for a mate, so to speak, rhythm section mate, and he thought that we would do really well together, and he was right. He was that kind of a guy. When I put down my right foot on the bass drum pedal, on the bass drum, he was right there every time. He never pushed, he never drug. He was right with me. And, we tried to both listen to each other a great deal. We didn't ever have to talk about anything. And as I said before, it was kind of like a jazz group. That particular band you'll notice the songs have a head, and they have an open solo, and everybody plays as much as they want to play, as long as they want to play, and then you have an end. You know, you have the head and you have the ending, and that's pretty much a jazz tune format. But that's the way no matter what song we were playing, that's the way they all kind of came out.
This is unbelievable. I mean, and really, you can see the repertoire at the time. You guys were playing like the Freddie Hubbard tune, Little Sunflower.
Yeah.
And you'd play these Dylan tunes, so it was roots music, and then you'd have Stevie Wonder in there. And then, obviously, one thing I was curious about is, did you and John connect about? I know John, what he loved reggae too. He loved reggae. And I was wondering because some of the Harder They Come, and there's a few tunes. I mean, did you get when you talked about humbled might be the wrong word, but you really had a woodshed and get your reggae chops together. But were you able to play and get together with John and play a lot of that stuff?
No, never really got together and did it. It was always impromptu. It was always we both always played what we felt, what the song dictated, and then we added what we felt was right for the song, and it worked out really, really well.
Did you what do you remember about those? So after the studio session, the first Garcia session, who reached out to you and said, because I mean, you did gigs in Keystone, but you weren't living in the Bay Area at that time, right? I mean,
so I was living in L.A. and we talked at the end of the sessions, and John said, you know, we play live up at this club, and he told me about the Keystone, and would you be interested in coming up and playing like on a Saturday night? You know, just come up for the weekend. And I said, yeah, yeah, that'd be cool. And at that particular time, I was looking for some more or a more varied musical existence, expression. I've been doing the thing with Elvis with that band, and I'd done some Emmylou Harris recording, 2 or 3 albums with her, the same guys, and she was going on a road with a group called the Hot Band, and I thought it was time for me to take a little change of, you know, just a change of scenery.
Absolutely.
And I loved the Bay Area, and we went up there and just did really, really well playing those club gigs, and then we'd branch out from that and play an occasional venue around the area. So basically,
yeah, and the live touring we heard that was April 12th, 1975. I mean, just fantastic stuff. You know, did you? I look at John and Jerry as Jerry also. They're pretty spiritual people, but they resisted any kind of organized religion. Did you come and try to help them with that towards the end of their career?
Yeah, I did. I gave Jerry a book that I had read that made a big impact on me. It was given around some of the Dylan people. In fact, Jerry Sheff had received a copy of this book called Mere Christianityby C.S. Lewis, and it just kind of wrapped it all up for me. Even though at one time in my life I thought I had already been a Christian, had seen all the things that I needed to see and experience, but this was a whole new thing.
Can you explain why it had what specifically, why did it open your eyes so much?
Well, it basically finally said you either have to accept Christ as to who he was, or he was like a guy that runs around saying he's a boiled egg, one of the two. You finally have to get it. And like Dylan said in his song, you got to serve somebody, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so I finally came to that realization. And John gave me a copy of the book. And I remember the last time I saw Jerry, I ran into his limo, his car, and handed him a copy of the book. And said, "Hey, check this out." You know, so that was it.
Yeah. Yeah, it didn't. It's quite remarkable. Can you talk a little bit? I mean, you know, for as amazing career as you've had, it's still going. You just got back from tour with Neil Diamond. Can you talk about the various collaborations that you have going on, and also the local, what you're doing locally in Nashville?
Well, as you said, I just got back from a world tour with Neil. We just did finish the last leg down in New Zealand and Australia, and got a chance to be home for the holidays here, which we're very appreciative of and grateful for. And then I go off in January and do a gig in Europe for about a month with the Elvis TCB band, and we're backing up an Austrian singer who sings Elvis's music but doesn't look anything like him or try to sing like him. That would be too weird. So,
Yeah, that would be very weird.
Yeah, it'd be like your worst nightmare. So, but anyway, and we've been working with this guy on and off for the last 10 years, and then I think we're going to have some time off during the summer, and I can possibly do some projects around here as they come in. So that's basically why I moved to Nashville. So there's such a live music scene here and great players, and a lot of people want to come here to record. So I'm still trying to be involved in the business.
I often say in my monologues that the music industry has turned into a small business. Do you think that is an accurate statement?
Turned into a small business?
Well, I mean, a business. I mean, it used to be an industry,
Yeah.
I mean, can you just talk to the audience about Nashville's a hotbed, but it's also like, that's where the heaviest cats go. And how has it changed from the time that you came in 1970?
Well, it was a cottage industry back then for sure, and as you say, and then it became a big thing. And in fact, even to this day, I think all the recording contracts that are put in through the musicians union is the only way to gauge it, other than record sales, is the fact that Nashville has more than all the other cities put together on a yearly basis. So it's still a lot of recording going on here. And I wish I could say that all of it's really, really good, but when it gets like that, it gets to be cookie cutter because a lot of it's being motivated and definitely supervised and by attorneys and bookkeepers and accountants, and I mean it's not too many people are, as they used to be. They were putting money behind solid talent. Now they're having a tendency to kind of stamp it out, so to speak. So it's a little frustrating.
Yeah, you're hitting something important. What do you mean stamping out?
Well, I think they're just looking for. I don't really know how to express it other than the fact that when I say cookie cutter, I mean they're just like assembly line music.
Right. And
a sound, an acceptable sound. If you put a steel guitar and a violin on a rock and roll record, and it's country music, So.
No, I was going to say maybe you get a chance to run into my old buddy Michael O'Mardian over there.
Yeah, I know Michael.
Because Michael was you and I would love you guys to collaborate on something, because two of the hippest cats that saw it as a cottage industry and despise the cookie cutter mold that we've turned it into. So, Ron Tutt, happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas to you, and I look forward to doing part 2 with you in the new year. I hope you had a good time.
Yeah, man, we did. We
Good.
did very much.
We cooked, man, and we'll talk soon. All right, thank you so much. All right.
Thank you, man.
Cheers, buddy.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. And that's it for this edition of the Jake Feinberg Show. It's cold out there here in Tucson. Bundle up. Thank you to Jackson Craft. We'll be back next week, same time. Have a great one. Happy Hanukkah.
/contact. That's SYDNEY international.us /contact, where you can reach us by phone at 520-704-2235.
Broadcasting live from the Tucson Original Studios. This is KEVT Sahuarita Tucson, the Tucson Originals, local dining at its best.
Fox Sports trending now.
12:18 to go in the second quarter from the Army-Navy game. Navy just got its second touchdown run from Keenan Reynolds. They take a 14-10 lead over Army. That's his 85th yard touchdown run for the career for quarterback Keenan Reynolds for the midshipman. He now has the record for most touchdowns scored in a career in Division I college football history. Tonight at 8 Eastern Time, the 2015 Heisman Trophy will be awarded. The three finalists include Clemson quarterback Deshaun Watson, Alabama running back Derrick Henry, and Stanford running back Christian McCaffrey.